Welcome back to Jewish Life 101. This is the first half of an interview that I had with Rabbi Shea Hecht. In this half, we're going to be talking about intermarriage. What's the problem with intermarriage? And why in Judaism are we against the concept of intermarriage? Enjoy. Welcome back to Jewish Life 101. I'm Zalman. This is Rabbi Shea Hecht. He is the chairman of the board of the organization of NCFGAE. They work on Jewish education, such as the Release Hour of Brooklyn and New York City. And they run a couple of yeshivas, a couple of Jewish seminaries for both men and women. He's most famous for working with cults, busting cults, and decultizing or de-brainwashing people who were involved in cults. Today we're going to speak about three topics. We're going to speak about intermarriage. We're going to speak about what is the difference between a cult and religion, and what is the difference between how we spread out Judaism, which is a very big part of our religion, versus how other religions spread out their religion. Are we the same? Are we different? And what differences are there? Let's start off with our first topic about intermarriage. So the basic question is basically, why do we not intermarry with other religions? The problem isn't that people will stop being Jewish, because we hold that being Jewish has to do with whoever your mother is. So if your mother marries someone not Jewish, there won't be less Jews. And also, even if there were to not be Jewish, that wouldn't affect the kids, because the kids would just be not Jewish like anyone else on the planet. So what difference is there? Sorry, not what difference. What's the problem with us having intermarriage through other religions or non-Jewish people in general?
Okay. They're basically, first of all, Zalman, thanks for inviting me. I feel honored to be part of this great success, and you are launching and moving in a very, very nice direction, reaching out to hundreds of people, hopefully thousands and maybe millions of people will follow and be inspired by you and your guests. The question of intermarriage. Let's remember, when we look at Judaism in general, we have 613 mitzvahs. Yet, within the 613 mitzvahs, which, by the way, in today's times, throughout your lifetime, you can only accomplish less than 100 of those 613. But that's a side point.
Right.
You have 613 mitzvahs. And then you still have the 10 Commandments, which we speak about, and other laws that we call cardinal sins or cardinal mitzvahs versus other mitzvahs. So the first thing is, there is a verse that shows up more than once in the Torah that says, you shall not marry out of your religion. That is a commandment, both for men and for women, not to marry someone who is not of the same religion as you are, which in this case is Jewish.
Right.
Now, there is a secondary part to that mitzvah. It's called the practical part to that mitzvah. Just imagine the following. A religious Jew puts on tefillin every day, keeps kosher, does all the mitzvahs properly. He marries a non-Jewish woman. Okay, now, how is it going to have a kosher home? Is the wife going to be familiar with the laws of kashrut? How is he going to keep Shabbos? Is the wife going to be familiar with the laws of Shabbos? How are you going to keep Jewish education or anything else? And vice versa. A Jewish woman who serves God, has a relationship with God, prays every day, does her mitzvot. Now she's marrying a non-Jewish man. Is that man going to appreciate when she stops her day to do her prayers? Is that man going to appreciate eating certain foods or not eating certain foods at certain times? The Shabbat, not doing certain things on the Shabbat. So there is a practical part to it, a very, very real part to it. That, listen, you're bringing two people with two different ideas. The joke I like to tell people about marriage, because I preach a lot about marriage, is the young man comes home to his father and says, Dad, I found the girl I'm going to marry. And father says to him, well, my son, I hope she likes the same food you like. And my son, I hope she likes the same music that you like. And I hope she likes the same art that you like. And I hope she likes the same things that you like. He says, Pop, you're old-fashioned. Don't you know that opposites attract? He says, my dear son, the fact that you're a male and she's a female is enough to attract. Yet,
100%.
when we look upon the staggering numbers of divorce in America and in other countries as well, which are even higher than in America, what the first thing, compatibility. Two people have to be compatible if they're going to live together. And what is the common ground? Okay, is art the common ground? Is music the common ground? Is food the common ground? Oh, now you're talking about religion. You see, other things we can change. I may have been brought up with one diet. I can change my diet. I may have been brought up with endorsing one team in sports, but now all of a sudden I can switch to the other team. But religion, it doesn't work that way. Particularly as a spiritual leader and a person who has worked with people and taught spirituality, it's not only the observance, it's not only the behavior, it's not only the action mitzvot that we do when we serve God. There's so much of the spiritual, the connection. And therefore, Jews seem to feel things different than non-Jews. Right. And this has been tested many, many times, both by Jewish people and non-Jewish people, that we know that simply when certain things happen within the world, particularly to Israel, particularly to the Jewish people, that there's a different reaction. And it can be problematic. So, yes, God says you shouldn't marry, for whatever reason it may be. I'm not sure what his reason is. At least for right now, I'm going to say that.
Right.
But on a practical level, I'm looking for a shidduch. I'm looking for a mate for my son. I'm looking for a mate for my daughter. What am I looking for? The first thing I start looking for is someone that's compatible, someone that's going to complement each other, not someone that's going to be at odds constantly with each other. So if you're going to serve one God and I serve another God, particularly many of the religions actually put Judaism down. They say that we know this, particularly what's going on right now in the world. The infidels, we're all infidels. They have to kill us all. That's the things what they're preaching. How can you live and share a life and share a bedroom with that person who believes that death is the only answer to you? So, on a practical level, we have a tremendous, tremendous problem. Right. On a spiritual level, there's actually a very, very interesting passage in the Talmud. Talmud says as follows: Hashem, God, took the Jewish people and he spread them out amongst all the nations of the world. Why? In order to attract converts. We want to attract converts. Now, we will talk later when you talked about the outreach of Judaism versus... We don't look for converts. We don't want converts. We dissuade converts. We push them back. We push them away. Nevertheless, the fact is that there are many who do want to come to Judaism, as there are many who want to change their religion, whatever the religion they have and whatever religion they're born to.
Right.
But generally speaking, we believe as follows. The cornerstone of all religion is God. And if you believe in God, that means you believe in some level of divine providence. That means the reason why you were born to the mother and father that you have, there's a reason. And if you were born to Jewish parents, probably you should continue that Judaism. And if you were born to Christian parents, probably you should continue your religion. And Muslim parents or Hindu parents or whatever it may be, there is a divine inspiration and a divine practical application to that we believe that whatever takes place, God made this thing happen.
Right. So number one, I wanted to point out, he mentioned earlier about divorce rates. From what I've seen, again, I'm not nearly as experienced as Rabbi Hecht. From what I have seen, or at least from what I've heard and from what I know, people, when it comes to getting married, it generally has to do with either physical attraction or, like the joke, people like the same music, the same ice cream. In Judaism, we actually have a specific system where, even though they obviously have to be compatible in general, we try to see specifically and their direction in life if they're compatible. Because you can live with someone who likes the same ice cream as you, but if one of you want to live in Canada and the other of you want to live in Mexico, you guys are going to be living in two different countries. It's not going to work. If one of you guys want to raise your kids this way and one of you guys are going to want to raise your kids the other way, the kids are going to have a conflicting morals. And you are not going to be able to communicate that to each other. You need to be able to have the open communication and the acceptance of the other person. That, I think, or from what I understand, is the backbone of the problem that Rabbi Shea is presenting. I'd like to ask a question, though, that although he was explaining people do have their own religions, in Judaism, we don't try to get converts like we will explain later, but there is a concept that we have that we try to make everyone in the world understand that God gave the Torah by Mount Sinai and he gave the 7 no-hide laws. Meaning that when we would say that what is the perfect place for a Gentile is to believe in the Jewish God, which is the real version of God, if you could say versions on God. But although we don't want him to convert, we want him to keep certain commandments. So my question for you is, if someone were to be holding in that place, that they are a non-Jew, but the Jewish version of a non-Jew, the one that follows what Judaism says. So he doesn't have the own conflicts of his own religion, and he accepts Judaism's view to an extent. Would your answer still stand, or would it change slightly?
Again, within Judaism, there's the philosophical, there's the spiritual, and then there's the practical. The first thing is, if a couple comes to me and says to me, we plan on getting married, we're not of the same religion, what advice you can give? What I say to them, never mind what advice I can give you. How do you view it? It's going to be Rosh Hashanah. Tell me what's going to happen. It's going to be New Year's. Tell me what's going to happen. It's going to be Passover. Tell me what's going to happen. It's going to be Easter. Tell me what's going to happen. Often those people who come and intermarry say, well, religion means nothing to me. I said, okay. And how do you know what it's going to mean to you tomorrow? And how do you know what your life experiences are going to be? And we see so many people who at a later age in life, if that later age is 20 or 40 or 60, have made major changes in their spiritual life. They've all got an awakening and said, hey, God does exist. I want to serve God. I want to be close to God. And then the conflict could be even greater. You built already a family. You have a situation. I use a line often, I tell people, is you don't want to fall in love with the wrong person. You want to fall with the right person, someone that's going to compliment you, someone's going to uplift you, someone's going to work together with you. As the Bible says, an Ezer, someone who's going to really be your helper. Right. Not as a kenegdoi, with someone who's going to challenge you and someone's going to hurt you on every step of the way. So I think we first have to take a practical view. And you spoke about in America, the divorce rate is over 50%. By intermarriages, those numbers are much higher.
Wow.
In Scandinavian countries and other places in Europe, it is over 70%. Again, if religion plays a factor, it's even higher. Because we are created in the image of God. And all of us want to have a relationship with God. No matter, never mind, don't tell me how you are as a teenager. Don't tell me how you are when you're in your 20s and you're running after money and running after fame and running after a lot of different things. You get to a point in your life that you say, hey, wait a second. What are the important things? What do I really have to take? What have I accomplished in my life? And once you get a little bit more serious, you realize, hey, 1 second. Spirituality may in fact be more important than physicality. So now all of a sudden, why did I marry someone? Because of their looks? Because of their money? Because of their stature? Or did I really truly believe that there was a spiritual soulmate at play?
Right. And also I'd like to point out that someone who is coming from this background where they're non-religious, so to speak, until now, generally when they pick a religion, except for the people obviously who go to India and do a whole soul search journey, if their parents were a certain religion, they'll go back to their religion. So that's psychologically. And then from a spiritual sense, we explain that a Jew, his soul is a different soul. We've spoken about this a couple of times. He has a Jewish soul. So both spiritually and psychologically, the likeliness is that he's going to go back to the Jewish religion, leading into the problem that we've been discussing till now. Before we move on to the next topic, now I'd like to point out that Rabbi Shea has a book called Admissions of a Cult Buster?
Confessions of a Jewish Cult Buster.
Yeah.
And my second book is called Whatever It Takes.
Right. So I haven't taken a look at the second book. What does it speak about?
Well, it speaks about all different, not only cults, but we talk about abuse, which is unfortunately a problem in today's world. We talk about raising families. We do talk a little bit about cults. We talk about other misleading isms that are not necessarily a cult-ism, but it is another way. Today one of the problems that I have is with breath work. In most cases, people are not doing it properly, and they're doing it in a way that it encompasses a religious, a spiritual aspect, and that spiritual aspect is not godly, in my opinion.
Right.
So I address many of these issues. It's over 100 stories, 30 chapters. We touch on many, many real life things that people come in contact with in our growing up, so to speak.
And Rabbi Shea's first book, I have personally read. I think it's an amazing book because what it does is it discusses mainly the problem of cults, obviously, like the title, but also it discusses the problem of intermarriage. And the way that Rabbi Shea writes this book is that he brings stories that both explain and show how it works. So it's very interesting. They're very, very stories you'll never hear from anywhere else. And they properly explain what we're explaining right now about intermarriage and what we're going to explain about cults, I think, even more in depth. But before we move on, I wanted to ask if you could say a short story about a case that you dealt with in relation to intermarriage.
No, the case that I want to make about intermarriage is the Jewish spouse that calls me up after 10 years of marriage and says, you know what, I thought my Judaism would not play a role, or I thought that his or her Christianity was not going to play a role, and guess what? I found out that my partner is now going to church. I found that my partner is now going to religious instruction. I now found out that I need something. And it's a tremendous disappointment. Shalom bayis, God created the world that we should not be alone. Commentaries explain that the first letter of the Torah is a Beis. Beis is number 2, because everything is 2. The design was husband and wife. The design was teacher and student. The design one, parent and child. The design, everything in life really works with partnerships. There's a giver and a taker in every situation. And it is heartbreaking when you get a call with someone who has had all the dreams and all the aspirations to realize that on a practical way, it didn't work. So now what do? Do I throw my partner out? Do I run away? What about my children? What do I tell them? Where do they stand? How can I inspire them? How can I make sure that they're not hurt within this whole process?
Right.
So that is a painful moment when people realize that, hey, this intermarriage is not going to work.
Right. I like to, for context, I generally point out anything that was stated in relation to Judaism's opinion that is not explained over here. I am planning we're having another interview with Rabbi Mendel Wilhelm, where we will actually discuss how peers connect, how that works, specifically also relating to marriage, a man and woman connecting. So we will explain more in that concept and what Judaism says about it. Did you enjoy today's episode? Feel free to share with a friend. Here at Jewish Life 101, we spend many hours on every single episode, and it's all with your support. Just click the link in the description to find out more, and we'll see you next time on Jewish Life 101.